promoting his pro-Trump, anti-impeachment narrative. I'm joined right now by U.S. Congressman Ted Lieu of California, who serves on the House Judiciary Committee. He was up there today and was part of today's hearing. Charlie Sykes, editor-at-large of The Bulwark. Glenn Kirshner, former federal prosecutor. Natasha Bertrand, national security correspondent for Politico. Congressman, do you believe that the law professors who were brought today to testify by the House Democratic majority on the committee made the case for articles of impeachment, particularly abuse of power, bribery, and obstruction?
Thank you, Chris, for your question. Impeachment is one of the gravest powers of Congress, second only to our power to declare war. It must always be our last option, reserved for those rare times when we can't wait for the next election. Today's hearing showed that we may be at one of those rare times because these professors made a very strong argument that the abuse of power and the bribery engaged in by the president threatens the very integrity of our next election.
Do you think they made the point that it's a duty as well as an appropriate sanction, that the president ought to be impeached?
They made a very strong point that the Trump administration has taken the position that the president cannot be indicted, and therefore the only mechanism to hold the president accountable is impeachment. In this case, the facts show that Donald Trump withheld critical military aid to Ukraine, withheld a critical meeting with the Ukrainian leader in exchange for leveraging that leader to launch a bogus investigation into the DNC server, into the political rival of Donald Trump.
Glenn, when a president's impeached, we usually have a short sentence or so that goes in the history books that explains why. It was Monica or whatever else, it was the Watergate, and we can walk away from it 20, 30, 50, 100 years from now and know this is why he was impeached. Did those witnesses today give us that capsule statement?
Yeah, it would be easy if President Trump only committed one impeachable offense because we could keep it tight. But here's what I think these experts did so well, Chris. They said, listen, the founding fathers were concerned with two things primarily: protecting our elections from foreign interference and a president abusing the power of his office for personal gain. What do we have Donald Trump doing? Both of those things. This really is an impeachable offense on top of an impeachable offense.
Give me the capsule statement.
It is that, well, this president hit the trifecta of impeachable offenses because he sought foreign interference, he abused office for personal power, and then he covered it all up by refusing to acknowledge the power of Congress to investigate it. That's a trifecta.
Let me go to Charlie on this. You're out in the heartland, at least close to it in Milwaukee. Do you have a sense that there was enough people listening intently today, enough to get all that?
Probably not. I don't think that most people sat through 8.5 hours of hearings, but they will get the sound bites. And I agree with Glenn absolutely. There's no question they made a very, very compelling case. But will the public actually hear that? My guess is both sides got the sound bites they wanted. Fox News got the sound bites they wanted. And look, let's be honest about it. If the really compelling firsthand testimony of the Trump administration insiders that testified before the House Intelligence Committee did not move the needle substantially, 4 law professors are unlikely to do this. So I do think this was a worthwhile effort, but I do think that in terms of a television show, persuading maybe, the unicorns in the Senate who might exercise some independence, I'm not sure that it changes the game, which again underlies why I think Democrats need to continue this investigation and maybe need to be much more aggressive in pursuing more evidence, more testimony, and more subpoenas.
It's December. What are you advising the Democrats to do in terms of the calendar?
Well, first of all, I'm not sure that what is the rush? Do they really want to do this but right before Christmas? Because I think that runs the risk.
Yeah, they do.
Number one,
let me speak for them. They want to get this over with before the election.
I think there's a risk for that. I think there's a risk that you're going to ignore new evidence that might come out, that you're going to let too many people who should testify off the hook, and quite frankly, basically letting the story die over the holiday and playing into Donald Trump's hands.
Which witness will come forward in your eyes, and you're studying this like we are, who can you foresee as a star witness who could come forward and move the needle with the Republicans?
We don't know for sure, but John Bolton has to be at the top of any list. And the fact is they have not yet subpoenaed him. He has firsthand information. He knows a great deal about this, and he needs to either testify before the House or he needs to testify during that Senate trial itself.
Well, that could happen as well. But anyway, Natasha, I want you to take a look at this. Professor Carlin, the woman professor out there, there were 3 men out there, but she was quite forceful here. She challenged the president's argument that in demanding investigations from Ukraine, Trump was trying to fight corruption. She didn't buy that. It was simply to advance his political interests. She cited the testimony of Ambassador Gordon Sondland, who said the president only wanted an announcement of the investigations. He didn't want any investigations. He just wanted an announcement so he could smear Biden by saying he's being investigated over in Kiev. Here's Carlin making that great point today.
There's a lot to suggest here that this is about political benefit. The most chilling line for me of the entire process was the following. Ambassador Sondland said he had to announce the investigations. He's talking about President Zelensky. He had to announce the investigations. He didn't actually have to do them, as I understood it. What I took that to mean was this was not about whether Vice President Biden actually committed corruption or not. This was about injuring somebody who the president thinks of as a particularly hard opponent. And so it is only in the president's interest, is not the national interest, that a particular president be elected or be defeated at the next election.
Natasha, I thought that was well done.
Yeah, it was a really powerful point. And then she went on to say, look, if this was legitimate criminal investigation, you don't announce an investigation, right? Because that would tip off people and it would undermine the investigation entirely. And she also noted that that only makes the case for this being bribery even more powerful. The fact that the president was clearly doing this in his own political and personal interest rather than in the United States national security interest. So that was really powerful. And then, you know, there were also points made about the fact that the president didn't raise the issue of corruption at all with Vladimir Zelensky in either of their phone calls, despite having talking points that suggested that he do so. So the argument that Republicans put forward today about the president being very concerned about Biden and corruption in Ukraine just really wasn't credible.
Well, George Washington University professor Jonathan Turley, who was there for the Republicans, argued that the case against President Trump lacked evidence and a crime. And like many of the Republicans, he argued against this process.
That is why this is wrong. It's not wrong because President Trump is right. His call was anything but perfect. It's not wrong because the House has no legitimate reason to investigate the Ukrainian controversy. It's not wrong because we're in an election year. There is no good time for an impeachment. No, it's wrong because this is not how you impeach an American president.
Congressman, though, I want to ask you about what Charlie Sykes and Charlie get in on this, too. Congressman, do you think that any worthwhile purpose would be served by extending this process beyond this year?
We cannot allow the president to benefit from his own obstruction of justice and obstruction of Congress. But let me just make this very simple. The call transcript itself is very damning. So, for example, let's say one of my local police chiefs comes up to me and says, hey, I'm one of your constituents. I want you to help me because, my mom is not getting her Social Security check. And I say, sure. I want you to do me a favor, though. I want you to announce you're investigating one of my political opponents. If I did that, I'd like to be going to prison.
Yeah. Glenn, I want to ask you about Rudy Giuliani's out there. This process we're covering here, as Charlie says, they need more investigations. Well, maybe he's right in the sense the hell's still going on. He's still over there digging up dirt on Joe Biden.
Yeah, and I have to wonder if he's really over there continuing to try to dig up dirt on Joe Biden, given that what that has now brought down on top of the president, or if he's over there preparing for his own criminal defense. Parnas and Fruman they're indicted. It is reported that Parnas is getting ready to flip, and he's got tapes and he's got records. You have to believe he's going to give up Giuliani. I'll bet you, Chris, Giuliani is over there trying to put his own future criminal defense together.
Anyway, thank you. I've got to go back to Charlie because I'm an argumentative person. It seems to me that the Democrats in a situation which is more polarized than any time in our life before. There are no middle-of-the-roaders anymore. There's nobody sitting on the fence about impeachment. They've had all the testimony. They have everybody knows it's a about Ukraine. Everybody knows the president shook that guy down because he wanted dirt on his opponent. We all know the facts about the central case, which I believe Pelosi's going to push right through this. Do you think anybody's ready to change their mind?
Maybe not in Congress, but in the public. And, you know, keep in mind, you know, you and I have been following this every single day, but there's an advantage to sometimes slowing it down, letting the facts marinate, letting the public catch up. Every day that goes by, I think there's a chance that you're going to see new revelations about all of this. Look, the Democrats, I think, have a stronger hand than they think they do. They're winning in federal court and compelling the testimony of Don McGahn. There's reason to believe that maybe the courts will support some of the subpoenas. You have world-class reporters like Natasha out there and reporters for the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times and the Washington Post who are digging into all of this. If, in fact, they don't vote until, say, the middle of January, Chris, what have they lost? What exactly have they lost by waiting until the new year to have this vote?
Well, as a very smart chief executive friend of mine said in the recent book title, leave something on the table. Thank you to U.S. Congressman Ted Lieu, sir. I think you're on the right